Cool. Well, thanks to you guys for joining. This is super cool. So it's a great opportunity, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it as well. I'm super excited to chat with you guys. As a Trojan myself, I got to sit in the exact same seats that you sit in on campus when we're there, and yeah, it was a great time. I think fondly of it, which is awesome. But it's great to just you guys have been through such an incredible year, right? Like we'll never forget what this year was like in each of our own personal experiences. So I think if there's anything that we can draw from it, right, it's that you guys are getting an amazing preview of what it's been like to work remote for people who have been working remote this entire time too, right? It's the magic of whatever you do, whatever your daily life is, that comes from this, right? This is so much of what today's business environment is virtual collaboration. This is actually the role that I'm in now is the first one where I ever had the opportunity to work remote. And it was definitely a steep learning curve for me to go from a culture of like, hey, we're in the office together every day to you never know where your next assignment's going to take you. I'm not a roving journalist by trade by any means, but it definitely gives you that sense of variety, right? Whether you're producing something that is happening around the world or in a city nearby where you're able to be on hand personally to supervise. There's a ton of different ways to sort of make all that happen. And we've really done a hard cut this year to doing all of that from, our houses, right? Like we're not on set if a commercial is being shot. We're not with the artist in a recording booth helping to, understand their performance. So it's really different. And it requires a lot of, the FIO of it all, right? Just we figure it out and we keep going. I think that's the one constant that I feel like I can look back through my career so far and say that, the one thing that links them all together is, there's deltas where you don't know everything about that job, but you have the kind of courage to get in there and say, hey, I'm going to figure it out and keep going. And Allison, I'll pause if you want to kind of interject questions and help direct me as we go. That's totally fair.
Yeah, if you want to start off with, kind of what your current role is and then what kind of led you to it, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So today I'm a marketing vice president at Synchrony Financial, which is a big finance company, yay. But what we do is basically and this is all stuff that basically just applies to your parents because you guys are under 18 and can't have credit cards. But if your parents have a Gap card or they have a card from Lowe's or the Home Depot, those store credit cards, that's what we are most well known for, right? We're the largest provider of private label credit cards in the United States, right? We also have our own products. That's the part of the business I work on most. So we have a bank. Our bank products are kind of the products that I market mostly, as well as our own series of MasterCards. So that is where I have kind of landed. But the fun part about that is that my work is as our brand leader for that group for direct to consumer. So I get to produce cool stuff like a series of video shorts with stars from Issa Rae's production company, Radio, or our production partnership with Marvel Studios, right? We are the promoting partner for Black Widow, which comes out this summer, as well as The Eternals over Thanksgiving. So, I get to administrate and run that partnership with Disney, Sony, and Marvel. So things you don't think of a bank as doing, that's part of our world as well. So we're kind of trying to, take that story and take it to places it hasn't been before. So it's a super neat role. My function there basically is I get to be the communicator and the marketer for our finance folks, right? They need help telling that story to people, customers who understand our value, right? So that's basically what every marketer is doing. And the great story about that is that there's a lot of ways to get into that. It's not like, for example, becoming a doctor where like you go to medical school, right? You specialize, you have a very, very focused range of study that's only a singular path. There's a lot of ways, there's a lot of skill sets within marketing. It's both an art and a science. We have data analysts, we have creative artists, we have copywriters, we have proofers, we have everyone basically from the idea of like, hey, let's make a Super Bowl commercial to tell us more about what our customers want, right? Like what should the products be that we look at launching in 2 years and 5 years and 10 years? Those are all functions of marketing. So it's a big team, but that's basically how the sausage gets made. And my role here, I've been in for almost 3 years, and I came to it new to the organization from the outside. I was actually recruited and headhunted in by some folks I'd worked with previously at another financial services company, Experian. That's the largest credit bureau in the world, and our offices are super close. So we could all meet for lunch if that was a thing people were doing
now. What are some of your day-to-day tasks?
Yeah, so as a virtually distributed team, right? Most of my team, most of the rest of the bank sits in the Eastern time zone. So our days start early, and thankfully they get to end early as well. You guys are my last call today. So I get to kind of wrap up my day at 3 instead of at 6 or 7, which is awesome. But it does start early. So I'll work with my creative team. They mostly sit in Georgia, for example, totally random, but they happen to be there. So we'll work on items from our next campaign. We'll talk about where we're going with social media. That's also a function of brand marketing. So we kind of talk about what's happening with our strategy there. We're consulting. I just was on an email thread with our folks at Marvel trying to figure out what the summer will look like for the launch and release of Black Widow, waiting for those updates. But again, it's all happening virtually, right? It's all just us talking to our computers and or joining meetings and sending emails. So there's very little water cooler talk. There's no, oh, let me get an update on that in the hallway. It's all this, right? So if you guys are doing this now, you have a much bigger preview of what it's like to work in business than ever before. Advertising is so not the world of Mad Men anymore, and this year proved it, right? We're just doing it all from wherever we are.
How important is the major that students select in college towards this type of career?
Yeah, totally great question. I think the thing about being a marketer is it's a big bucket of skill sets, right? So we have an audience analytics team, right, that helps us collect reputation information, like what are people thinking and feeling about the brand. What are their experiences like with our agents, right? When you think about, how you interact with, people that have your money, especially if it's not in person, right? You're interfacing through an app or over the phone, right? Those kind of remote experiences. So there's a ton of data to be worked through there, right? We're always looking at trends, how we can improve, and that's a big group as well. But those are folks that, for example, went on a very different track than I did, right? Like we also have creative folks, right, who are scripting videos, helping us shoot and produce those videos, audio spots, podcasts, all of that. So it's very much a lot of ways through how you are kind of focusing on your area of study and how that lends itself to the application that you're going to deliver value for the business. There isn't such a thing as like a master's degree in marketing, for example, or a PhD in marketing. No CMO, no chief marketing officer has that. So education is absolutely the distinguisher in the elevator, and it gives you the right framework on how to think about the problems that you're going to encounter. But it's not necessarily like, oh, you must have an undergraduate degree in marketing, for example, to be a marketer. My undergrad is, I have dual degrees in public relations, right, which is a marketing function, but also in political science, right, legal studies, because I was going to go to law school and be an attorney. And you guys get a preview of how all that came out, right, very differently. But it was great regardless. And I think, being able to be flexible and say, hey, I'm going to listen to where my strengths lie along the way helps you figure out, where you're able to lean into your own abilities, right? I think you're going to kind of go along that path and, hopefully test and explore, right? And say, hey, is this right for me? Is this the right approach? Do I feel like I'm succeeding? Do I have a real interest in this? And it's fine to say no and keep looking or figure out another way into what you want to achieve, right? There's never just one door. unless you're like, I'm going to go be, a doctor, right? There's only one door there. But in marketing, we're a little bit more inclusive, which is great.
There's a question in the chat from one of the students. He says he's really interested in finance. What is it like working for Synchrony, and what is the difference between a marketing and finance career?
Okay, good question. So if you're thinking about like finance, right? Like when I think of my finance team, and I do financial reconciliation for our part of the business, which is financial planning and analysis. And by the way, I'm not a math person. In marketing, we joke that's why we all became marketers, is because we could barely do math, and Mrs. Eldridge can attest to that. Like I still remember seeing like the grade in the hallway, like 2 days before graduation. I was like, oh, I did okay in that class. That's great. That means I get to graduate. So it was like, oh, I'm on the bubble. I don't know about this. But those folks, and by the way, like, it didn't determine my ability to figure out and keep up in our conversations about financial planning, thankfully, right? Like there was more of a context around how we're doing, what we're doing, the importance of how we spend, all that. And at least that part makes sense to me, which is good. But I think a big difference is that our finance folks, for example, like we're in a financial industry, but there's many roles in the company that aren't financially focused specifically, right? Like our marketers, right? Like that's our role, right? That's really what we think about. And the products that we work with, right? That we are marketing are financial products, right? But it's the same skill set as if you were working at Nike and marketing athletic apparel, or you were working at Sephora and marketing cosmetics, right? That's that same skill set of like, hey, we create value for the company because we can tell the stories about why our products are important, and they help people, reach what they're trying to achieve or grab for. So I think the difference for us internally between marketing roles, marketing careers, is that you kind of have basically you're a word person, right? More often than not, or you can at least overlay that skill on data. For example, if you're like a marketing analytics person, that's kind of the hybrid there. But if you're a finance person, really, you're living and dying on the spreadsheet. It is all about how the cash is coming in, where we're spending it, how it's flowing, how we're allocating it in different ways, where we think we have the opportunity to play if we're looking at, for example, a merger or an acquisition, right? That's very much in the space of our FP&A team, and how we're making sure that we are looking at our balance sheet in the right way at all times, right? Because it's all about what's coming in, how much, do we need more, do we need less, are we managing the cash flow the right way, and what opportunities is it helping us be in line for, right? Like, because a lot of the question when you're looking at, hey, you do one thing as a business, right? But you're like, oh, but there's a need that's close to us. How do we reach out for that, right? Do we build it? Do we buy it? Is it a mix of both? And those are all the decisions, for example, that like our finance team plays a huge role in. So our overall umbrella business is financial, right? But we're not all number people, I would say, which is great for me because I never planned to work in finance, right? I worked for years at Disney, and that was very much a place I felt like I might always be in travel, for example, telling those stories. That was really relatable and understandable to me at that time. But the thing that I discovered as I sort of branched out and moved into finance and credit specifically was that every business needs storytellers. Every business needs people that help communicate its value to different publics to create awareness and understanding about what it does. And that's true whether you're the Magic Kingdom or you are a
bank. What are some of the good things about working at Synchrony?
Oh, yeah, it's awesome, actually. Like, I think, specifically unique to the bank, right, is that we've always been a distributed team, right? They've always encouraged you to be wherever, right? And that you travel, right, for meetings or to work with your team in person. So the role of opportunities that are available to you are massive, right? The bank is one of like 5 arms of our business internally. The group that works with our retail card partners, the group that works with payment solutions, right, and more. Those other teams, for example, were very much more in-person cultures, but the bank, our culture was different, right? Our leader wanted it to be unique in that, wherever we needed to be, we could be. And that flexibility not only gave us the opportunity to work from wherever, but the skill set, right, of saying, oh, I know how to actually conduct business from my house. I know how to conduct business on the road from an airplane or from a movie premiere or wherever it needs to happen, because that's a literacy in itself too, right? That's its own kind of skill set of saying, oh, okay, great. Like you need that today, we can make it happen. Not a problem. Because we're all working in different time zones now. So it was a great kind of pre-lesson to not being thrown for a loop when the world shut down and kind of went into this different way of working at this time last year. So honestly, I never pictured myself at a bank, right? Like if you had asked me when I was your age, it would have been the furthest thing from my imagination. But yeah, it ended up being a great fit. So I, don't think that, just because you think of something one way today, maybe the way you always think of it, I think would be the lesson there, right? Like it's be open to those possibilities for sure.
What did you think you were going to go into when you were in high school?
Oh, I was for sure. So I read a bunch of John Grisham books in like middle school and high school, and I was sure I was going to be like a corporate attorney, like fighting espionage in corporate America or something. I was certain that was going to be it.
Yeah, just to show our students that, you life takes you in different directions. So can you talk, there's another question from a student, but before we get to that, can you talk a little bit about like what you studied in college and how that led you away from being a lawyer and towards this job or this career?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had really awesome instructors in kind of both courses of study. And the thing about studying law as an undergraduate major at my college was you had to pick an emphasis, right? You had to say, here is where I think I will practice, right? And so I picked entertainment, right? Because in Southern California, there's a lot of call for entertainment attorneys, right? Intellectual property is huge in California. And that's basically how artists, select and protect their creative capital, whether that's a movie script or, dance or music, whatever it is, right? Whatever kind of the collaterals they're creating, how they protect it, that's intellectual property. And so I was sure I was going to go that way, but I already knew that I was a good writer, and I wanted to explore a little bit more of that. And that's where I got into the public relations component. And I liked that course of study a lot, but I remember at graduation thinking, this is cool, but I'm really just scratching the surface, right? Like I know there's more here that I don't know, and I feel like maybe I can be more knowledgeable about that. And that was like 2007, right? Like kind of the as Austin Clinton thinks, how people had to kind of dodge it at that point with the recession. So I was like, hey, like maybe this is a great time to stay in school a little bit, gain some more skills, be more competitive in a job market that's going to be kind of rough. And that's where I decided I could kind of keep learning more about public relations, communications, growing my writing skills, because I'd already written on staff at Disney at that point. And that was really helpful, right? And that opened the door immediately to transfer teams from entertainment to public relations, public affairs, and communications. So that kind of turned the corner for me. So working at Disney was awesome, right? At Disneyland in Orange County down here, coming in the door, doing one thing, showing your skills, kind of proving that you had the ability to do more than just one thing. That was a great opportunity. Yeah, I think being open to that was really key.
Great. So one of the students wrote, as someone about to enter college who wants to go into an area of business, are there any skills that you think are really important?
Good question. I mean, I think, I think having an understanding of where you feel like your aptitude is going to hit is key, right? That's kind of the most important thing to say, like, hey, I think of my skills today as sitting here. And a little bit of just job board exploration, I think, is a really valuable tool as a preview of saying, hey, here's a role in marketing at a place I know, right? Maybe it's a local hospital, or it's a community group, or wherever it is, wherever that opportunity is laying kind of in an area that you know and understand something about, and looking at the skills they're looking at for those roles. I think understanding the gaps that you have between where you sit today, right, and with just pure interest, and a very developed role is kind of a helpful forecast to say, okay, like if I'm interested in, you know, saying that I want to be a junior associate at Goldman Sachs, you know, by the time I'm out of college or something, you know, what are they looking for, right? And does that seem like that's a place that I might want to spend some time is super valuable. But the two things that are important to every job listing, whether you're entry level or super senior, is attitude and perspective, right? Those are the only two things we're in control of every single day, every single hour in our work experience is how we're perceiving things, right? Not how we're perceived, but what we're taking from it and how we're approaching things, right? Because I think that helps cast you as a person who is calm and thoughtful, right? And can listen and take in difficult things and puzzle over complex tasks. Listen first, right? And then ask those questions and gain that understanding. But I think that's always the first thing, right? Like we talked about at the very beginning, like that FIO-ness of it all, right? Like that figure it out attitude is a big part, especially of entry level jobs in so many professions, right? Just being able to say, hey, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to solve this. I'm going to crack that nut. That's something you won't see in any job listing, but it's there. It's off the page. It's a part of every role. So I think being open to that, being ready for taking up those challenges is always a plus. And that's going to apply at every level too, right? Because that means that you're ready then wherever you are, being ready for the next level. There was a great Oprah quote from years and years and years ago, and it stuck with me for some reason. And it was just that, you know, wherever you are, if you take pride in what you're doing, that puts you at that next level as well. You're ready to take that step. Even if the only thing you're doing is making French fries, right? If people come to you because your French fries are the best, because you've taken pride in putting together a great product and people love it, that means that you're ready for that next step. Whatever that is, that's up to you, right? What it looks like. But having that sense of like, I'm going to be the best at what I am doing, that's like attitude and energy every day, right?
So also from the students, do you have any suggestions for internships or networking?
Oh, great question. I mean, I think that's where, yeah, like internships 100%. Because not only is that a great opportunity to say, ooh, I like this, right? Or I respond well to this type of leader or leadership or work environment. On the flip side of that coin is, oh, I don't I don't want to be in an environment like this, or a leader who views my work in this way, or an environment that's like this. So I think internships let you try that on for a quarter at a time and say, ooh, I think this work is compelling. I think, you know, my contributions could be valued here or not, right? That's a great way just to kick tires and say, you know, so I did an internship as like a junior PR associate for like a community arts group in Orange County down here. And it was super cool, right? I was doing really, 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 really junior stuff, right? Like news clippings and just helping them plan their like big annual benefit or whatever. But I worked really closely with their senior practitioner and got a sense of what her role and responsibilities were like, and thought, you know, do my capabilities lend themselves to that? Like, do I feel like I could be successful in cold calling reporters and asking for coverage, or, you know, sharing our latest news release with, you know, local TV stations and affiliates, right? Is that a thing I could see myself doing? So yes, I think that's invaluable experience. And I will say that was my junior and senior years of college, I did that. But I was also taking those experiences because I worked the whole time in college at Disney, right? That was kind of the lens I brought to all those work experiences there, of saying, okay, is this office well functioning? Is this good? Is there a future for me here? Yes, no. So I think whether that is like an actual like paying job, an unpaid internship opportunity, a paid internship opportunity, yes, those are vital. And those were both inside and out of kind of that college job board atmosphere. That was really helpful to find those opportunities, right? Whether that was just through professors that had connections, right? And were able to sort of say, oh, I know people in the community who are looking, or they need, you know, just someone to help answer phones for a little bit, right? Whatever that was. Yes, super helpful. Or even just that sort of official job board posting too, right? Those I think are really a little bit trickier because they're published opportunities, so they're typically a lot more competitive, and you want to just be like, oh, this is the perfect fit for me, right? But if you have that lens to an after school job, like whatever that is, there's always that opportunity there to say, hey, I'm scooping ice cream for you, but like, how are you marketing this business on digital? Like, do you have an Instagram page for your ice cream parlor? Are you interested in that? Like, can I help you take some pictures and shoot some reels and videos of people that love your ice cream? Like, I think that's the type of idea that business owners are like, yes, that's cool. I should be doing that. I just don't have the skill set. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy to know how to do it right. And sometimes it just takes that one right person to say, hey, I think you should maybe think about this, and I'd be willing to help you, right? It's not just having that idea. It's saying that idea is an opportunity for me to prove myself, gain some skills, like make a test case experience, and follow through with it, right? Like it's that energy and just being able to say like, yes, I'll figure that out, and I think this will be cool for you. Like it's that positivity of like, this could be a good thing, right? Like if you're just not encountering like immediate resistance and like a wall of no, the door is already halfway open, right? It's just like throwing yourself through it and being like, great, I have a cool test case example. Like I did this before and it worked out this way. Because those are experiences that you can always take with you down the road, right? You'll learn from it, whether it's successful or not. I think that's the big thing about internships is you're going to learn so much again about what you do and don't want and whether things are or aren't successful, right? You're just going to be layering those experiences on top of one another and growing your abilities. And that's what helps make you a great, entry-level job employee when you're ready, right? You can be like, hey, I had 3 great internships and here's what I learned and I'm ready to hit the ground running.
That's such an interesting idea, using the part-time job that you already have to like turn it into more of like an internship type thing. And then you mentioned like that professors might have, connections. Do they typically announce those? Do they refer students, or do you seek them out from the professors? Like, do students need to go ask their professors?
Yeah, I think, every organization may have like their kind of lens around the policy of that, but I think that's a great after class chat of like, with the professor that you're vibing with, and you're like, great, I understand this course material, like this all makes sense to me. Do you think, right, because professors live in that community where you are, like, do you have a thought on, where I could sort of lean in here, right? Like, and they might be like, oh, hey, that's the University Advancement Office. That's the yearbook. That's the local PR team, right? Like here in town, whatever that is. They're going to have some really good like boots on the ground knowledge. So yes, those are less formal, but they're still going to be plugged into that flow because those are questions that students ask them every year. So they may not be like, ask me for internship opportunities, right? Because they may not have one for like every single person in the class. And they may have like 5 classes of people. So that would be like, no professor has 150 internship opportunities every semester. But if you're willing to just kind of have that brief conversation and say like, hey, I'm really interested in this, is there anyone that that might be looking? I think super valuable and costs you nothing, right? So just a great like kind of fruit tree to shake those low branches up and see if something might be right.
And do you have any advice on approaches to job searching? So maybe down the line when they're graduating from college, what should they be looking for?
Yeah, I think, and that's, yeah. The tricky thing is, I think there's such pressure to have like the perfect thing lined up when you graduate, right? But that may be too many expectations to put on your immediate job out of undergraduate, right? Because for me, I was like, great, the job market is terrible now. I'm going to keep my my job and stay in school, right? And just keep going because I knew I could get a master's degree in literally 3 semesters. And so it was worth it to kind of keep going, right? So I think it's all about exploring what that next right chapter is for you. If you feel like you're ready to launch in with both feet and say, yes, I'm going to go, bust down doors and do kind of like an entry-level job, fair, right? Awesome. Like, but I think the thing to look for is that it's got to be that right opportunity for you. And you say, hey, this is something I'm really passionate about, because that will mean that you're drawing the right experiences from it. If it's not, then I think maybe it's like, hey, I feel like I need more skills, right, to be relevant, to feel like I've got the right approach, to feel like I'm marketable, and especially a tough job market. Absolutely fair to say, to look at it either way. I think, knowing that you are not all that your entry level job is, right? Like that is a jumping off point. It is a springboard to bigger, better, and you, who knows how long you may be there, right? It could be 6 months, it could be 3 weeks, because maybe someone in your office is moving and they're really saying, hey, we're going to keep all of this going because we want to take this awesome new person and plug them in and see how they do here. So, you have to decide how long you want to be in that role, and how many skills you want to feel like you have gotten through experience before you're saying, okay, this is well running and I'm respected here and I feel like I'm making a great important contribution and I'm ready to look for whatever my next chapter is, right? I think you always got to kind of be having both sides of that conversation with yourself, to feel like you're plugged in there, right? I think the other thing too about the right kind of entry level job, like the first, outside of college, is you really want to make sure you are aligning with some solid mentorship opportunities, whether that's someone who is in your job who's mentoring you, or you're connected to the previous question, networking, right? The great thing about marketing, public relations, or communications is there's a lot of really awesome industry sort of networks, right? Where you can get membership to that have student components, right? So like in college, you might become a member, like I did, of PRSSA, which is the Public Relations Student Society of America. And that feeds into PRSA, which is the Public Relations Society of America. They have like a Yo Pros chapter, right, for young professionals, where they're helping to kind of bring opportunities together onto a job board. You meet regularly with other peers. You get to talk about experiences that you're having at kind of the same cohort level. You learn about, which employers are having a lot of turnover or where a lot of opportunities lie. Because you're learning together, right? It's sort of like at that point you're in like a regional group with those folks, and you're able to really say, hey, I'm a junior associate here. Here are the experiences I'm having. What are you guys feeling? And a lot of those chapters also have mentorship opportunities. I mentor a couple young folks here in our local chapter of PRSA, and we get to talk about, what they're hearing, what they're experiencing, what their challenges are, and how they're sort of meeting those, right? Like what, that's true for everybody as they experience it, but being able to go to someone who is more experienced in your field specifically is going to give you a better context than saying like, hey, mom and dad who don't work in my field, what's going on here, right? Because they're going to be able to draw from their experience, but that may not be a really good reflection of what's actually happening in your world. So being able to talk to somebody who speaks the language of your kind of employer and field is key, because they can help you speak and decipher that language too.
How did you learn about the organization while you were in college?
So they were active on campus, which was great. So PRA was our like ad club at Chapman, which is public relations and advertising, and they were great, right? I actually didn't join because I was super busy like the whole time, but I knew about them, and my advisor ran that club, so I was pretty plugged into what they were doing the whole time. And then I joined the campus chapter when I went immediately after and got my master's, right? That was when I sort of was wanting to learn more about the community, the opportunities that are there. So I felt like I missed that in the undergrad experience, and I made up for that as a graduate student. I felt like I was like, oh, I really want to get more plugged into that flow, which was good. So yeah, but they make themselves known, right? They want to have members. There's always food at those meetings. Like they're really trying to get everybody like, come eat our pizza. Even though that might be terrible, it's fine. It's a great way to meet people. It's really fun to kind of just like kick it with people that share that same interest. And you feel like you are kind of moving forward together toward a goal, right? Like, oh, we want to be, people that work on these neat campaigns and that can produce, work that we know and understand and is effective, right? Like I think especially in marketing, it's all about being effective, right? It's like, hey, is that thing that we're doing what we thought it would do? And if yes, great, but you don't learn as much from that, right? When it's no, that's where you really get to drill in and say, hey, like this didn't perform. Why, right? Like let's approach it differently, right? It's that sense of like, hey, you learn more when it doesn't go perfectly. Otherwise, you're just like, great, it worked. Good job. But like, you get a lot more insight when things kind of come off the rails a little bit, or you can look at like, oh gosh, we would change how we did that differently next time. And those are kind of like conversations you get prepped for on group projects and things like, PRSSA, PRA, right? They do a lot of award entries where you'll work on a project with your group and you'll get to enter it into like a national competition for doing some local work for a business or a local chapter. So that's a great thing both to put on your resume as a starter and just be able to draw on, right? Like, hey, our experiences were like this. It's those group projects that you guys do, right? It's like that, but on steroids and for a client, not just for yourself. So it's a good progression of saying, hey, I know how to be functional in a group. I know how to get that stuff done.
What do you like best and least about your career?
Good question. I mean, I think, the standard stock answer of being in marketing is that you get to meet cool people, right? I've gotten to work with, Issa Rae, Julie Andrews, right? It's sort of like, wow, those are really different people that you never keep it together in one sentence. But, you get to have these really sort of neat celebrity kind of laced encounters. And that's fun, right? You develop a skill set around feeling normal around those people, and then they really are just like other people, which is cool. When you're in entertainment, you sort of all are working together, which is neat. I think my personal favorite part of what I get to do is I feel like it's great to feel like you are in a role where you don't know everything about your role today and you're going to keep growing because the business around you is changing, right? And as long as you pay attention to where things are going and how trends are developing, you can still say, hey, there's still new stuff in this job to be excited about. So I think that is the part of my work that excites me the most is, as I look back at like my 3 years in my current job, every March of that time span is very different from any March that came before it, right? Like they don't stack up. There's not a lot of overlap. They're really different from each other. So you really feel like you are always growing. I think the least favorite part of my current role is probably just the challenge of a little bit of remote work, right? You feel like you don't get as much just catch-up time with your employees, right? Like you don't have office mates. Your office mates are your houseplants. And that's sometimes a little bit like flat, right? You're just like, oh, it's cool to be like in the office and seeing what other people are doing, right? And that can sort of like help you springboard and respond and kind of play off that, right? You're like, oh, marketing analytics is going down the rabbit hole on this super cool new look at, a certain customer type, right? Like, should we be thinking about that? Product is looking at, a bunch of new opportunities on, how to take what we're doing now and make it super mobile or more flexible or offer more choices, right? Like how would we bring that into our work? Like how would we tell that story in a way that customers can understand in 2 seconds on a billboard or in 15 seconds on an Instagram ad, right? Whatever that is. So I think you're kind of working a little bit in a cone of silence in that way where you're not exposed to those thoughts. And so that's tricky, right? I think it's in a perfect world, you'd have a little bit more insight into kind of just those casual overlaps, right? Where you can just hear people are talking about while you're heating up your lunch in the break room, So I do miss that. I think we'll get back to that, but it's been such a gift to like just keep working this whole time, keep pushing on a bunch of cool new projects, and learn more, right? About both yourself, how you work, what you like, and what projects you think are kind of rewarding in the meantime. because our work changed a lot, during the pandemic, right? We had some things come our way that are very non-traditional, right? We had Payday, which is an award-winning short. We actually won a Tribeca Film Festival award, right? We shot it right before, and we actually released it last Valentine's Day, February 14th, and that was just right before the whole world changed. So we've gone through a lot of really sort of unique and unexpected work since then. But work is a gift, right? We're leaning into it all the time and just trying to see the opportunity to kind of keep delivering value, right? Keep saying, hey, we're part of these conversations, right? We still talk to customers. Let's make sure we're saying the right thing. We're saying something that makes sense, and that is a message for us.
How is your work-life balance? And maybe it's different now during the pandemic, so maybe also think pre-pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think super different, right? Because right, I was traveling 2 or 3 weeks a month, right? Whether it was to our other sites, right? We would actually meet quarterly with our cool creative group who's in Atlanta. And we have not met with them as a whole team at all in the pandemic, right? That goes out the window. So we're finding kind of new ways to keep in touch with those groups. But before then, we were really doing a lot of it in person because we wanted to show how important it was, right? To be present, to actually get in the room together. So I think before, right, you're finding ways to work on the road, which is its own kind of skill set, right? And so that was sort of our normal path then, right? And you're saying, oh, great, we've got, film events to produce. In 2019, we had 3 Marvel movies came out that we were attached to in 3 months in a row. That was, I'm going to miss at least one of them. But it was the 3 that led up to, one of them was Captain Marvel, and then the third of the 3 was Avengers Endgame. And that was a super crazy half year of just here, there, shoot this commercial, this premiere, capture this content. It was wild. And then, but shifting into the pandemic, I think the challenge for us has been trying to keep all of those same projects, those balls in the air, going at the same time as your experience has changed so much. So yeah, just the whole opposite side of the card, right? Saying, hey, we're going nowhere, right? So how do we group up, right? We literally got Zoom and Teams. Before that we had WebEx, but we changed to Zoom and Teams 90 days before the pandemic hit, right? So it was just oh, let's learn this new software. Your whole job is going to take place on video calls now. So it was a really hard cut over. But yeah, just definitely very, very different, right? And again, we'll figure it out. Flexible, let's keep on it. Everything still has to keep going. And here's a new project, right? Here's something you've never done before, right? Very different, new client, challenging conversations, but you're doing it all, on video from your house. So yeah, 100% different. But again, every time you're interviewing for a new job from here forward, we'll be able to say, oh, remote work, no problem, right? We know how to handle, we can keep it all moving. We might all go back to in-office stuff. I don't think all of us will, but if we did, again, right, if there's ever an event similar to this, not a challenge, right? We've been there before, not an issue. We know we can keep the lights on and keep rolling with the punches because, every year in business, right, there's peaks and valleys, and you got to kind of just keep navigating through them, right? It's just steering into the waves. So yeah, it was all good, challenging, and way unforeseeable. 2020 did not look like anybody imagined it would, but yeah, thankful for a team that's just hey, okay. So I have a light box in my office that says just another first, because that's literally something I say to myself on a weekly basis. You're always going to be doing new stuff in the role that's right for you and is engaging to you, and that's going to be something that charges you up versus that drains you and saps your energy, right? I think, in marketing, we're always about next, right? The hill over the horizon is where we're going and where we're trying to meet our customers. So it's got to be something that kind of, charges you up.
students, if you have other questions, keep putting them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. What advice would you, oh, did someone have a question? No. Okay. What advice would you give to your high school self?
Oh man. Well, I think, you know, the hard thing is, would your high school self even listen to you, right? Like, oh, are you, you don't know, right? You're not me. So I think, you know, I think the thing I try to tell myself is that the greatest skill is flexibility, right? Like, it may not go the way I was, like, I had everything planned out. It was going to be all milestones and this was all going to go a certain way, right? And most of that did not go, right? Like, I definitely didn't plan for a pandemic, you know, this year of my life. So I think just being able to know that you have a plan, but your plan is going to keep changing, right? Because if you're listening to where your greatest skills and value lie, you know, then you have to keep attuning to that, right? Like, keep finding what you want to deliver and be responsible for, but that may not be the X that you put on your wall that you're like, I'm going to do this specific thing, right? Like, it may not be that. So I think it would just be being flexible, right? I got to have a bunch of really cool high school experiences at Castro Valley. I was in band, right? A lot. I was in the regular band, jazz band, our marching band, all that fun stuff. I founded our color guard, which was a really cool experience. And I think being able to just be a student leader there made me feel like I could get things done, right? Like, I didn't need to feel like I didn't know if I could do things, right? I got to have experiences there that showed me that I could deliver. And that was really great sort of foundation to be able to say, like, hey, you've got a little bit of a spark there. Maybe see how that works, where you can kind of, you know, take that flame and grow it a little bit here and there. And there's a lot of application for that, right? Like, there are businesses, companies, employers, or your own enterprise that can respond to that, right? That can say, yes, that's valuable. There's a place for your skills and talents. And that can afford you a living wage and you can support yourself. So I think that's killer, right? Like, that's the battle, is being able to say, like, oh, it doesn't have to be a certain way, right? There's a lot of flexibility out there. It just has to be something you're passionate about.
Thank you.
And I hope I would hear that message, but probably not.
Well, I hope the students on the call are hearing the message. Oliver, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, thank you for the great conversation today. I really appreciate for you stopping by. I had a quick question about, like, the work experience that you have, like the work-life balance. I'm not sure if you addressed this earlier, but I guess, like, I mentioned I was interested in finance, but I guess I'm still exploring right now. I'm reading a lot about the like, I guess, not so nice work-life balance. So what is some of your thoughts on that? Like, is there anything you've learned, like, going through it, like, from your career?
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, the tricky part about work-life balance, and we joke about this now, right, is that it's not so much work from home, it's like living at work. So I think it's all about being clear with boundaries. You know, it's so easy, unless you block the time and take it, to say, hey, I'm not going to get a real lunch, right? Like, I don't know if anybody on our team has actually, like, blocked and taken a lunch in the 3 years that I've been here, but it's finding what works for you, right? And since I work East Coast hours, right, that's making sure that I'm available for my team when they're on, but that also means that I'm not working myself until 7 p.m. Pacific every night. And there's obviously exceptions to that, right? Like, you might, like, pick up your work phone and be like, oh, is something popping? Like, oh, that's fine. Oh, good, right? Like, our Disney peeps are cool. Like, they're trying to find, you know, the payment for the premiere for Black Widow. And we're like, oh, we paid that in December. And, like, you know, you just want to keep eyes on, like, big things like that. But being able to, like, put the phone down and say, like, hey, I'm gonna, like, go out for a bike ride, or I'm going to go like walk my dog or whatever that is. Like you've got to maintain kind of those clear boundaries. I think the other thing too, and this is a great tip that actually came from a boss that wasn't mine, but she was awesome, is and it felt really revolutionary when she said it. And we were like, oh, I don't know. But she was like, oh, I don't take my work phone on vacation. And we were like, how's that possible? Like, you're an SVP. Like, what if things blow up? And she's like, no, my job when I go on vacation is to make sure that before I leave, everybody knows like what's coming. They know as much as I need them to know to be, plugged in and clued into what's going on. But, I don't, right? Otherwise, why take the time, right? Because you're only filing those vacation days if you're actually on vacation. You're not really on vacation if you're on the beach looking at your phone. Like that doesn't really count. So I think it's being able to say, hey, this is, how I'm coming at it. I want to make sure I'm clear with expectations. And that's tricky to do in entry-level jobs, right? Because you might have to be, on call for events that might happen on a night or a weekend, for example, or something like that. But it's just being able to balance and say, hey, if you need this from me, I want to make sure I understand, the boundaries around that, right? Because does it really make sense to be working, 60 hours? I think I remember one of my good friends from Castro Valley, his cousin worked, I think she was a couple years younger than us. She worked as an intern at CAA, right, which is Creative Artists Agency. It's one of the biggest agencies in Los Angeles for actors and writers and other talent. And they would do this thing, which was super shady, and they've gotten their hands slapped for it since. So it's not like I'm, sharing secrets out of school here, but they would work in the office, right, and then clock out, and then they would go back to their desks and keep working. But then they would have to get on the floor and crawl out the door so that it wouldn't turn the lights on after they left and were supposed to be gone. So it's that is totally shady and illicit and not any kind of approved labor practice, right? You want to make sure your employer is not asking that kind of thing of you, right? That's not cool, healthy, respectful, normal, any of that stuff.
Related to that, you mentioned earlier you used to travel a lot before the pandemic. So how did that play into your work-life balance?
Yeah, I think, the great thing is that people at all levels in our organization travel, right? It's a great skill and literacy to know how to manage and integrate that business travel with your life. But I think the other thing is that you have to make sure you know and are kind of counting all of those hours are hours that you're basically working. So being able to say hey, we ended up traveling back on Saturday, so I'm going to take a comp day, with manager approval on that next Friday just to balance that time. It's just making sure that, there's guidelines in an organization, right, that does a lot of travel, that helps you sort of manage that. That's really a really helpful kind of guide to rest back on and say hey, we want to make sure our travel is booked during a week. It's falling on a work day, right? It's not we're asking you to travel on personal time, travel on personal expense. No, that's all, falling within the actual sort of job envelope. And that's how that should be, right? No one's going to say, oh, hey, put, your next business trip on your personal card and we'll reimburse you. No, that is not how that works. If anyone says that to you, run, and then call Channel 7 News. But yeah, so it's all about knowing how kind of that should happen in a normal flow, because there'll be an exception to whatever those rules are, and knowing how to navigate when those happen is also key, right? If I had a commercial shoot that someone tells me, for some reason, I can't imagine this, but if it had to happen, if it had to be shot on a Saturday, for example, okay, fine. I'm going to be there, but we'll have to travel, and I have to make sure that I'm offsetting those days. So if I'm working on a Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to take 2 days at some point in the future to balance that out, right? And that's the right kind of set of expectations that come around, travel that falls outside a norm. But yeah, business travel is amazing. It can take you to awesome places, and you have great experiences when you're there. At in my world, premieres, major events, it's great. It's super exciting. It's awesome to be in the company of, your executives when you're there like that, as well as, talent, right? You're representing your brand, even just with your personal presence, right? And that's something I got to learn first at Disney, and that was a great kind of expose, because again, the sun never sets on Disney parks, right? Around the world, there's always daytime at a castle park somewhere. So it's just this kind of amazing world of like, hey, we've got a team, we can handle that. We're going to send our California group to Tokyo. We're going to send them to Hong Kong. We're going to send them to do a media tour of Australia, whatever that looks like. Being up for those opportunities and options was a great sort of like visibility into like, oh, how do you travel with that kind of group, those kind of responsibilities, that kind of work, that really ends up translating into knowing the right questions to ask when that next wave of opportunity comes your way.
So it is 4:00 now, so we're going to wrap up. But students and Ms. Stevens, if anyone has any last questions for our guest speaker.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to you guys for jumping in and giving your time to kind of join. This is, such a cool thing. Thanks to Ms. Zuckerberg for organizing. You guys are already taking an active interest in, thinking about the right questions for your future and kind of leaning into your skills and abilities. So hats off to you. You're already ahead of where I was when I was your age. And just remember, like, it's all about, the choices that we make and how we kind of channel our attitude and our energy and our priorities. So you guys are going to solve like problems we haven't even thought of and couldn't solve for ourselves. I think that's super exciting. Like, the world is all about, how you're going to change it. And it's just taking up the reins and figuring out the answers to those opportunities that are all ahead of you. So you're going to be great. It's going to be awesome.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to